All right, George.
Yes.
George, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn till I was almost 14. And then my parents moved to this neighborhood in Manhattan. And I have had the same apartment since 1951.
Wow. How would you describe your childhood? You had mom and dad?
Yes, I'm an only child. And my parents were very nice, reasonable, wonderful people. And they had a machine shop where they made precision metal products for airplanes, for propellers. I guess there are no more propellers. And they were hoping I'd go into their business. And when I started college, I studied engineering, but I more or less hated it. And I didn't know there was such a subject as linguistics. So I eventually switched to majoring in French, and then in graduate school I discovered the word linguistics and went into linguistics.
And you taught?
And I taught linguistics mostly at the College of Staten Island City University, but they also had a faculty exchange agreement with Hebei University in Baoding, China, neither of which I had ever heard of. And I went there and taught 2 separate spring semesters, 1984 and 1989.
So you're teaching foreign students how to speak?
How to speak English, but I was also teaching the English majors linguistics. It was a requirement if you were an English major to take linguistics, which was taught in Chinese. But since there was a faculty exchange agreement, one of their teachers had come to Staten Island, met me, took 2 courses with me in Staten Island, went back to Baoding, and suggested that they hire me, and that the English majors, rather than taking the regular English course, which is taught in Chinese, should take it in English taught by a native speaker of English, in particular by his former teacher.
You speak beautifully, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And what's your view on how Americans are speaking English today?
Well,
lots has changed, a lot of slang.
A lot of stuff has changed. People always put in the word like, which they never used to do, and that's a change. And then now some parts of the country made a distinction between the words cot and caught, C-O-T and C-A-U-G-H-T, and some didn't, and this distinction is disappearing. So my grandson, who lives in an apartment in the same building where I live, says things like, I caught cold sleeping in the cot, which is very different from what New Yorkers ordinarily say.
Yeah, there's a lot of other slang things that have become part of the...
Yeah, but I really hear people saying like all the time. And, I remember once, years and years ago, before it was that common, being sort of startled when there were passers-by, and a woman was saying, she was like, oh my God, and I was like, And I thought, what an interesting construction.
Yeah, I think a lot of that came from the California.
That's very likely.
Yeah.
And then I've heard people doing it who were not speaking English or not speaking standard English. So one day I was in Washington Square and there was a black woman, and she began her sentence with like. She said, like, ain't nobody don't do that shit.
One of the most interesting people I've ever met here in New York was a cab driver who picked me up at JFK once to take me to the city. And it was a Chinese man who I expected didn't speak any English because he looked like he was right off the boat from China. Except he talked like this, and he grew up in an all-Italian neighborhood. And he spoke exactly like Vinny and Joey from the neighborhood.
One finds these things out, sure. It's part of the variety of New York.
It's fascinating.
But then a few minutes after I heard that woman say that, there was another woman passing by speaking on the telephone in Italian. And she said, like, io non lo conoscevo. And I thought that was really interesting.
Wow. How has New York City changed in all your years? You're how old?
I am 84.
84, and you lived here for most of your life?
Pretty much all my life, except 2.5 years in China and 2 years in Philadelphia. And also my parents had a farm upstate New York, but I never lived there year-round. But we'd spend summers and weekends there.
How has New York City changed over the decades?
I think it has become, it feels safer. Maybe not right away, not right now, but mostly I feel it has grown safer and more expensive and more luxurious and generally nicer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been coming here since like 1990, and the variety of like the grocery stores have improved tremendously, drugstores, all that stuff. It's come light years from where it was then.
Yes, I really think it's wonderful. It's filled with variety. Although now, because of the COVID, things have shut down.
Yeah, we were talking about how it
Yeah.
used to be a 24-hour city, and now it's
Now less so.
yeah. And you were married?
I have been married for 59 years.
Oh, you're still married. Your wife is around.
Yes, my wife is around, and I have two daughters, one of whom gave me these pants.
Those are unforgettable.
Yes, and the other one and my grandson have an apartment in the same building where I live.
Oh, so the family's all.
Yes, and my older daughter who gave me the pants lives 2 blocks north of me,
That's nice.
so the frozen north.
Family's a great thing to keep intact.
It is wonderful. It's really wonderful.
What have you learned in your 84 years? What's important to you? What do people maybe miss out on in their lives? That's important.
One thing I feel I learned is it's no fun being angry. You should try very hard not to be angry and calm down. And if somebody's done something wrong, well, so what?
Exactly.
And another thing I feel I've learned is you never can entirely understand how another person feels. We sense the world differently. One peculiar example, when I was younger, I could hear very high pitches. I could hear dog whistles. And I can still hear high pitches, but I can no longer hear dog whistles. But I mean, that's just one example of how people are different from each other. We taste things differently. Some people are green blind or red blind, most are not. But I mean, it's part of the difference. But there are all sorts of little differences that we don't know how to talk about.
Yeah, one person's childhood can be very, very different from others, and that changes your perception of
It
everything.
certainly does.
Yeah. And your childhood was great, sounds like.
It was pretty much great. I was really very happy with my parents, although I didn't like being an engineering major in college, but that was not too long. That was for about 2 years or 2.5 years, till I very fortunately flunked physics. I was happy that that happened.
Do you have any regrets in your life?
Oh, there are times when I said things to people that weren't kind, and I'm sorry I did that. One peculiar example, I was a child and didn't quite know better, but I had an aunt much older than my parents, and she took care of her in-laws who were very, very, very old, and it was a real task for her. It was hard work. And they died within about a month of each other at the ages of, I think, 99 and 97. And my parents and I went to make a condolence call, and I said to her, "Oh, you must be very happy." And my parents said, "No, no, she's not happy." And I said, "Oh, I know." But I guess I wasn't aware of the fact that I was saying the wrong thing.
Yeah. You seem very happy.
Mostly.
Has most of your life been
It's been mostly pretty good.
pretty good?
I've had some difficult experiences. I left China the day after the Tiananmen massacre. The massacre was June 4th, 1989. The university where I was teaching drove me and my daughter to the Beijing airport the next day, June 5th. And then we flew to Tokyo, where we had not made any plans to visit. And so I discovered that Tokyo has the best pizza in the world.
Really?
Well, yes, maybe I thought so because I had just run away from China,
Yeah,
but but I think it really did.
That's funny. Do you believe in luck?
Well, there's all sorts of things that are lucky and unexpected.
Yeah, like some people just seem to escape death over and over and over, and then other ones tragically die at
Yes,
16.
these things really do happen, and sometimes something happens and you think it's bad luck, but it turns out to be good luck.
Absolutely, that's what I've seen.
I very briefly had a job teaching at NYU. My immediate superior was an extraordinarily nasty guy, and I knew I wouldn't be rehired. And at the end of the fall semester, I quit the job and decided to spend the whole spring semester full-time working on my dissertation, although this was economically a problem. But anyway, I made that decision and I finished my dissertation. My advisor approved it, set a date for defense of the dissertation, and died 10 days before my defense.
Wow.
And, you know, if he hadn't already set a date, I'd have had a new advisor who would have looked at it and said, well, maybe we can salvage it. And so I was so lucky that I had this miserable guy at NYU who made me want to quit the job. And it made me finish my dissertation while my advisor was still alive. He died at the age of 41.
Wow. Older generations always seem to disapprove of how the younger generations are just operating and functioning in the world. What do you think of younger kids now? You see a lot of them at Washington Square Park where we met.
Well, I feel mostly they're very pleasant and nice and interesting. And on the other hand, I think a lot of kids don't appreciate the fact that the United States is a democratic country and that there's freedom of speech. And of course, I've lived in China and very much became aware of the fact that there was no freedom of speech in China.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a little surprised that there's not much feeling of respect for democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people just seem unhappy with everything about the United States.
Well, and now we have all sorts of extremists running around. So I think they have the right to run around because I believe in freedom, but they are becoming increasingly dominant.
Yeah. A lot of these extremist groups voicing opinions that...
Right. Well, once there was a guy giving a talk in Washington Square, standing on a soapbox and saying, there is no freedom of speech in the United States. And I said to him, you won't believe me, but if you lived in the United States, you could say that and nothing would happen to you. And he said, I don't understand. I do live in the United States. And I said, and you just said that and you weren't afraid to say it and you haven't been arrested. And he said, America is racist. So that was his way of changing the subject.
Mm. Do you feel like the older generations, like your generation, understood hard work and delayed gratification more than these younger kids do?
That's a hard question. I'm not sure. I didn't.
Oh, yeah. You told me on the way here that you like to be lazy.
Yes. No, I never really liked hard work that much. And when I was a child, I didn't eat potatoes. And some of my aunts and uncles said to my parents, if you don't make him eat potatoes, he'll grow up to be a bum. And then when I became a professor, one of my uncles said, see? So he felt being a professor was being a bum. And of course, you don't quite do any hard work. Once on our farm, my mother and I were trying to shovel out a cesspool for some reason to make some repair. I can't remember what the situation was. And it was too much for us. And we saw the grandson of the neighboring farmer. His name was Arnold. And we asked if he could do it. And Arnold could dig much, much better than my mother and me put together. And after the job was finished and we paid Arnold, my mother said, what a wonderful young man. If only you could be like Arnold. And I said, if you dig, you get paid the minimum wage. And my mother said, what's money if you can dig like that?
Huh.
And sometimes my mother was very witty.
What was your favorite decade of your life?
Oh, such a hard question. Possibly the 80s, which included my living in China, even though it included some scary experiences. But it's hard to know.
A lot of people were making good money in the 80s.
I always made sufficient money. I mean, you don't get rich if you're a professor, but I always had a reasonably satisfactory salary, and I did have tenure, which is very wonderful.
That's great. What's your favorite thing and least favorite thing about New York City?
My favorite thing is the variety and the openness. And my least favorite thing, I think, is the noise at night.
Excellent.
But it's okay. I've gotten to deal with it.
Yeah, it's part of New York City.
Right.
What would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
Possibly to be tolerant of other people and to feel you'll never fully understand them. And somehow I taught myself not to get angry. And I think I don't know how that happened, but it did happen.
That's a great one. All right. George, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I wish you the best of luck.
And you too.